Well, welcome to this episode of Life Recovery Chats. Today we're going to be looking at step 9 of the 12 steps. We'll go over the step and then we'll go over some key points. Step 9. Step 9 is that we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Let's take a look at some key points to this step. The first key point I want to make when it comes to this step is that this, for most people, is one of the most difficult steps, but it also often brings the most freedom. When you talk to those who have done the 12 steps and gone through them, many people will say this is where they really saw a breakthrough come in their life. This is where they really felt themselves move from a lifestyle of bondage into a lifestyle of freedom. And this is one of the most difficult steps, and yet it's one of the most freeing. That's really amazing because oftentimes in life, the most difficult things can be the most worthwhile. And this is one of those times where doing something that's very difficult also has great results. The next key point I want to talk about is that fear is going to be your enemy here again. It can only be overcome with God's power and help. Some of the people that you've wronged, maybe you're deadly afraid to go and talk with them to try to make things right. Maybe you're not sure how they're going to receive you. But in the end, you have to do what is right. You have to follow God's way. And God says that we need to go make things right when we have committed a wrong. And so that is crucial in understanding as you go towards doing a step 9. The next key point is that this is an action step. You have to be willing to put the work into it. You have to actually do it. This is no longer just you sitting in a room. This is you actually doing what is necessary in order to see breakthrough come. You have to seek these people out. You have to be willing to do whatever's necessary to make amends with them. And this is not an easy step to do. And again, as I said in the last key point, you're going to have times where you're going to fear. You're going to have times where you're going to feel fearful. And you're going to need God's help. And that's where the surrender to Him. And by now, hopefully you're walking in a close relationship with God where He's able to help you overcome that fear so that you can do what's necessary in order to see the breakthrough come, in order to live in His ways. The next key point is that these amends may take some time to accomplish. There's people that I had on my list who I didn't know how to get a hold of them. I didn't know where they were at this point in their life. And so that's something I just needed to leave into God's hands, where I was willing to make amends to them, even if I didn't know where they were, that if God ever managed to bring them across my path, that I was willing to step out and go make amends to them. And there's been times where God has done that, where He's brought people across my path where I didn't know how to get a hold of them, people in my past, where I was able to make those amends. The next is that confession and asking for forgiveness must be followed by a change of heart and behaviors. It's not enough to just simply say you're sorry. It's not enough to just simply confess what you've done. There must be that commitment to change. There must be that change that happens through the way you live your life, that you're not going to continue to do the same things you used to do. And that is a very, very key point when it comes to making those amends, because it's a lot more than just simply words coming out of our mouths. It must be backed by a changed heart and changed behaviors. The next key point I want to say is that we are not responsible for the other person's response. We are only responsible for ourselves. This is so key when it comes to this step. I know I've had people on my list who, I would say most of the people actually had a pretty good reaction. Most of the people didn't even require much for amends other than the fact that I apologized, confessed what I had done to them, and asked for their forgiveness, and they were willing to offer it. When I said, is there anything that I need to do to make it right? Sometimes they just wiped the slate clean and they said, no, don't worry about it. I'm just glad that you're on this path to recovery and that you're wanting to change your life. You're wanting to become a better person. But there are others who didn't accept the amends being offered, who said, no, I'll never forgive you. You hurt me too badly. And as heartbreaking as that is, I am not responsible for their response to me. All I can do is what my part is, and that's to offer to make those amends. And if they won't accept those amends, then that is between them and God. And there's nothing I can do to change that until they're ready to change their heart. And all I can really do is pray for them, that God will help them to come to a place of forgiveness, not for my sake, but for their own sake, because that's like them dragging around chains. But I no longer take responsibility for those chains because I've taken responsibility for my role and I've tried to make things right the best that I know how. And if they're not willing to accept that, then there's nothing I can really do about that. Very key when it comes to a step 9. The final point, and this is so important, is that it's vital to recognize when it is not wise to make amends that will cause further injury. Again, I had people on my list who I had wronged, who I had done things to that weren't right. But for me to go confess to them what had happened would actually cause more damage than good. And so in those cases, I just simply need to submit that to God. I need to accept his forgiveness, still take responsibility, but I don't actually approach the person, because approaching them is not going to make the situation better, but possibly make it worse. And this you need to be very careful on, because sometimes this can be used as an excuse not to go make amends to someone that maybe you need to make amends to. And so once again, this is where a sponsor can be very helpful. Because as you talk these things over with a sponsor or a mentor, they may be able to help you in determining, those who you need to approach and those perhaps who you don't need to approach. And again, there should be a lot of prayer going on in this, and you should be learning to decipher God's voice at this point. And perhaps God will tell you it's not good for you to go talk to that person. You're just going to make a bigger mess than the situation already is. And so those are the key points when it comes to a step 9. Again, like I said, this is one of the most difficult of the 12 steps, but it's also one of the most rewarding. This is where a person really is laying down that foundation of that new life that they're wanting to build. It's no longer just theory, it's now putting it into practical application. So I wish you the best in this step and with the rest of the 12 steps. I hope God's doing a magnificent work in your life, and I look forward to seeing you in the next recovery chat. God bless you today.